Title: The Passenger I Shouldn't Have Picked Up. 007. The night was eerily still, the streets stretching empty under the dim glow of flickering streetlights. A thin mist clung to the pavement, curling like ghostly fingers around the tires of my car. The air carried a strange silence, one that felt too heavy, too unnatural, the kind of quiet that made you feel like something was watching just beyond the reach of the headlights. I had been driving for rideshare services for a few years now, always sticking to the late-night shifts. The roads were quieter, the tips were better, but the trade-off? Sometimes you'd end up with a ride that left a scar. Not the kind you can see, but the kind that sits in the back of your mind, whispering reminders of just how close you came to something terrible. That night, I didn't have a dash cam. And after what happened, I installed one the very next day. 043. The shift had been uneventful so far, just me, my beat-up but reliable 2005 Volvo, and the occasional groan of the engine as I cruised through dimly lit streets. It was past 2 a.m. when I got a request from a nearby convenience store. Nothing unusual about that, but the moment I accepted the ride, I felt something deep, unsettling pull in my gut. It wasn't fear, not yet, just a whisper of unease. As I approached the location, the unease turned into certainty. The convenience store was closed. Its neon sign flickered half-heartedly before giving up completely. There were no other cars, no signs of life. Just a single figure standing near the entrance, pacing back and forth like he was waiting for something or someone. 119. I slowed down, my headlight sweeping over him. He was wearing a tattered hoodie, the kind that looked like it had been through years of wear and tear. There was a hole in the sleeve, revealing an arm covered in grime. His movements were jerky, restless. He kept glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting something or dreading it. I should have canceled. My finger hovered over the button, but I hesitated. Maybe it was some misplaced sense of responsibility, or maybe I just didn't want to seem paranoid. Whatever the reason, I unlocked the doors. The moment he slid into the back seat, I regretted it. 151. Most passengers either bury themselves in their phones or stare out the window. Not him. He just sat there perfectly still, staring at me through the rearview mirror. His eyes were hollow, unblinking. My skin crawled. I focused on the road, but I could feel the weight of his gaze on me. I cleared my throat. Long night? No answer. Just that relentless stare. 225. To break the silence, I reached for the radio, but before the music could even start, his voice cut through the air like a knife. Turn it off. His voice was deep, raspy, like he had spent years chain-smoking. My hand jerked slightly on the wheel. I swallowed and did as he asked. The silence that followed was suffocating. 259 minutes passed, each one stretching longer than the last. And then, finally, he spoke again. You ever pick up someone you shouldn't have? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. I forced out a chuckle. I sure hope not. He didn't laugh. He didn't even react. Instead, he leaned back, murmuring something under his breath. I couldn't make out the words, but the way he said them sent a shiver down my spine. 333. He started talking again, this time about his past as a rideshare driver. Said he quit after some guy stole from him. His words slurred together, his tone wavering between anger and amusement. And then, he smiled. That smile, it wasn't normal. It was too wide, too knowing, like he was enjoying some private joke at my expense. Funny, he mused, his voice barely above a whisper. How much trust you put in someone sitting right behind you? 403. My pulse quickened. That was it. That was the moment I stopped thinking of him as just another weird passenger and started thinking of him as a threat. I focused on the GPS like it was some kind of lifeline, counting down the miles to his drop-off. But he wouldn't stop talking. His words tumbled out, fast and erratic, shifting between fragmented stories and unsettling confessions. At one point, he started apologizing. Not to me, to someone else, someone who wasn't there. I didn't mean it, he muttered over and over. Didn't mean it. We were minutes away from his stop when he suddenly snapped back to the present. You missed the turn. I hadn't. The GPS said I was on track, but I slammed on the brakes anyway, more out of fear than anything else. His tone changed. "Pull over, now." My hands were shaking as I did what he said. Number 546. The second I shifted into park, headlights appeared behind us. A police car. Relief flooded through me. The guy in my back seat reacted instantly. He slumped down, his body sinking low, trying to disappear into the shadows of the seat. I glanced back, my heart hammering. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow and steady, as if he was pretending to be asleep. I turned back to the road, my mind racing. What the hell was he hiding from? And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it was over. He lifted his head, looked at me, and grinned. "Guess you got lucky." Before I could react, he opened the door and vanished into the night. I sat there, frozen, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly they ached. I don't remember how long I stayed like that before I finally drove away. I just knew I couldn't finish my shift. It wasn't until weeks later that I stumbled upon a news article. A convenience store had been robbed the night I picked him up, 2 blocks from where I had found him. My stomach twisted as I stared at the screen, realizing just how close I had been to something truly dangerous. I never reported it. I don't trust the cops, but I did install a dash cam the very next day, and I don't ignore my gut feelings anymore.